global coalition working to promote affordable, high-performing, and inclusive appliances as a means to accelerate clean energy access. We currently work across over 50 countries and 25 key technologies. These are all, many of them are productive use technologies, and actually solar water pumps were chosen because of that for this particular campaign. You can see that efficiency for access priorities include access to cooling, agriculture, productive use, and the energy and health nexus, among other things. This particular campaign aligned with these existing priorities, and it was our way to have a market-specific intervention for the first time, and it basically expand our audience engagement to include consumers more directly. The campaign was kindly supported by the IKEA Foundation and USAID and GIZ's Water and Energy for Food teams. We're very excited to have Killian on the line today as well to discuss some of that with us. To go into how this campaign came about, obviously solar water pumps have been a technology that have been around for some time. In some cases, costs are going down. They're a bit easier to use with solar home systems, but there's been low demand. And some of this has been linked to various things, including low end user awareness of the technology's benefits. We'll share some findings from our baseline survey pretty soon to kind of show how that might look. There's also obviously the financing aspect compared to something like a solar lantern or a smaller appliance like a fan or technology. The cost of a solar water pump is much higher, and in many cases, financing is required. Otherwise, the technology is unaffordable. There's also limited understanding of how ownership of a solar water pump can actually positively affect agricultural yields and incomes. For example, making the link between switching from a diesel pump means I no longer have to pay for fuel. So the aim of the campaign mainly, as the name implies, was to stimulate consumer awareness and hopefully start to increase demand for a productive use technology in a market that we felt was mature enough where an increased demand could also be met with supply, and that environmental conditions were conducive to its use. So we didn't want to do this in an area where water resources were a significant problem, or where people would all of a sudden want to purchase a lot of solar water pumps, but there wasn't any high quality, appropriate options available in the market. So in consideration in all of these and various rounds of expert feedback and interviews, et cetera, we selected solar water pumps and Machakos County in Kenya as a highly viable campaign ground. Here's a quick timeline of the campaign's activities. Even though this looks like about 3.5 months, the campaign planning actually spanned, I would say, 2 years because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The campaign was actually meant to be held a lot earlier, but we're going to get into that. But the actual active campaign timeline spanned sort of mid-September through the end of December, early January. You can see sort of various activities that we've held across this timeline. The text in black, so for example, the community forums and the household visits were things that happened month on month. Very early on in the campaign, we had some unique things happen, such as the recruitment of influencers and partners, farmer workshops for training the influencers, and also to sort of shop around our messaging to make sure it was appropriate, and also conducting our baseline study. At the end of December and early January, we had things like exclusive radio interviews, filming of several TV episodes, and then conducting the end-line study. Lisa, did you want to share any polls? Should we pause for that?
Hi, Yasmin. I'll set up a poll in a few minutes. You can keep going.
Okay. So the baseline study that we mentioned that was conducted at the very beginning of the campaign. So we did this both baseline and end-line surveying because obviously this was the first time that an appliance-focused campaign of this kind was being done, and we wanted to know what the baseline conditions were to be able to measure success afterwards. So the baseline study involved, I believe, close to 200 farmers, if I'm not misremembering that. So it was a really good group selected from the county and at random. And at least 60% of them had been exposed to a form of irrigation farming before. And you will see, unsurprisingly, that diesel-powered irrigation was the most popular form of irrigation among the respondents. Solar water pumping was the least popular. And probably using the word popular is not the right way to say it, but the incidence of the ability to use a solar water pump was the least among all of the options that farmers that were currently irrigating in some shape or form were able to use. The most significant challenges that the farmers talked about was inadequacy and unpredictability of rainfall, which again shows that an irrigation method is needed in this area. And the households that were surveyed were spending about $60 monthly on costs that were related to irrigation, which again, this is a talking point where you can reduce this cost once a solar water pump is purchased because you're no longer paying for fuel. More than 80% of the farmers that were interviewed produced for both their own consumption, but also for commercial purposes, which again is a great reason to have a solar water pump to increase yields and therefore increase incomes, not just to feed one's family. This to me is the most poignant result of the baseline survey. Nearly all the farmers that we talked to, even before any kind of campaign messaging, once they heard the mention of solar water pumps and were explained what it was, said they would consider taking it up. However, only 25% of them even knew where to buy solar water pumps, which indicated a gap in access to information. Again, underlining the fact that this campaign was on the right track. So some of the marketing activities that we undertook, it was basically a mix of what's called above the line and below the line activities, above the line being sort of mass media, things like radio advertisements, filming of 2 features on Shamba Shape Up, which is a very popular local show targeting rural populations in Kenya that tackle various topics related to farming, not just solar water pumps, but they have done so previously. And this is where our colleagues from Water and Energy for Food came in, and we were able to make this a reality. The episodes will actually air in June of this year. So it's also a nice way, even though the active campaign has ended, it's a way to kind of bring this topic back up to provide sustainability and continuity. In terms of below the line activities, some more sort of interpersonal and face-to-face local efforts. We were able to hold almost 400 community forums across several sub-counties, where we carried out engaging sessions to educate groups of men and women about solar water pumping, and then close to 6,500 household visits for one-on-one engagements with families. We also had several Global Leap affiliated solar water pump suppliers who not only participated in sort of the creation of the campaign, thinking through messaging, et cetera, but they also participated in some community events. We also had some wall branding with the campaign slogan, which translates to great farming and great returns with solar water pumps, which from feedback that we received was well appreciated. And here is sort of an overview of the campaign reach. We estimate that about 3 million people were reached via radio. Obviously, this is a bit hard to gauge. We've worked with the local radio stations to kind of see what their own metrics were for the duration of the campaign. It should be taken with a grain of salt, or I should say it's not necessarily additive to things like we did in terms of interpersonal channels. There you can see close to 2,900 people were reached just via interpersonal channels, and through community forums over 6,700 people. So it was a pretty significant reach, given we just did this campaign for a short duration and in several sub-counties of one county in Kenya. So we were quite pleased with the reach. In terms of the campaign being informative, or kind of seeing that behavioral change and the information change that we were looking for, we saw almost a 50% increase between baseline and endline studies in terms of the percentage of people who found sort of the campaign idea and the topic informative, and who increased their knowledge. And 95% of farmers who previously practiced rain-fed agriculture, so who did not do any kind of irrigation, said that they would consider or actually are planning to switch to solar water pumps. 80% of the respondents said they found the campaign informative. Half the respondents, again, overall, said that they would consider or plan to switch to a solar water pump. This percentage it includes, people who currently do diesel or electric pumping as well. And in terms of the end line, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say we can do the poll now. I think there are quite a few insights that you've shared already, and it would be good to see if people are following along. So
sure.
I'll launch the poll. Yasmin, can you confirm if you can see the poll?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so maybe we could take about 30 seconds. I can already see some answers coming through. I will mention that for some of these questions, we might not have given the answer out already, but it's just good to gauge how you think that the campaign performed. Okay, just 2 more people left to respond, and then we can end the poll. Okay, great. Yasmin, we can continue with the presentation, and then once you're done, we'll revisit the questions and let people know what was the correct answer.
Great. You might want to end the poll if you want people to stop it, or people can actually continue responding if there are some that have not done so yet. So at the end of the campaign, again, as I mentioned, we carried an end-line survey to see if we can glean any insights on things that can help us interpret the campaign reach results. Obviously, it's great to say we reached X number of people, but really, was there any significant change in people's behavior or thinking around solar water pumping, and also what their pain points were? This is actually a great point. Like, you can say this campaign was a success, but we also observed a very significant gap in the access or supply and brand-specific technical awareness among the farmers. They understood the concept of solar water pumping, but they lacked information on specific brands, their capabilities, as well as where to purchase, even though we did collaborate with several companies, as I mentioned, that are affiliated with the Global Leap Awards that we also run, and my colleague Ruth will talk more about in a second. So there was still this gap, even though we did try to make that connection. The connection was not carried forward. The petrol or diesel powered water pumps as an irrigation method remained the first choice for respondents because they were still perceived as more durable, available, overall the best solution, easier to maintain, and most affordable. So that's something for our sector, I think, to continue considering, to kind of break down some of those barriers, to prove otherwise, and to also be able to provide more technical assistance, because that, ease of maintenance, repairability, et cetera, those things are quite important considerations. However, on the plus side, almost 80% of the farmers said that they would like to take up solar irrigation within 1 year. I think it will be important for, again, our sector to consider designing and implementing an effective follow-up strategy to, communications efforts like this one that provide people with personalized plans, either the financial or otherwise, to help them make this conversion to sales. Here's a long list of things that we felt worked well with this campaign. I'm not going to read through everything, but we can touch on a few here, and I'd be happy to take any questions or kind of go into more detail about any of these. But we did collaborate with the local government at the outset, and that really helped in getting buy-in and identifying the right target audiences. The sort of door-to-door activations, talking with people directly, one-on-one with households, as we had predicted, was the best outcome of the campaign. It really triggered farmers to start thinking about taking up solar water pumping. In many cases, we were able to leave behind brochures or flyers, and this seems to have helped sort of the increase in the community's knowledge. And working with local farmers as influencers definitely motivated many of the community members. You might remember that word of mouth was one of the highest ranked ways in which the respondents said that they have selected their method of irrigation. So doing the farm-to-farm visits, having local influencers, and these success stories really helped. Product demonstrations also were really highly appreciated. Unfortunately, we were only able to do, I believe, one or two. So again, on the end of the suppliers, it would be great if even more people participated and we were able to have more demonstrations, because it's a great way for people to test drive a very expensive appliance and to kind of see it in action and see with their own eyes how it works and how it might benefit them. Across the board in the campaign, we try to use the local language, which is Kikamba, and facilitating these sessions, both in Kamba and Kiswahili, made it easier for community members to participate and not feel left out. And the campaign tagline, as I mentioned, seemed to have been very well received. You know, in general, there was really positive feedback, especially about these sort of interpersonal efforts. In terms of what maybe could be done better next time, or what posed a challenge, was again access to products. Proximity to products is a barrier to increased adoption, and we know this for across the board in the energy access and off-grid appliances sectors. The nearest access points for solar water pumps in this case was Machakos Town, which was a distance, at least from several of the sub-counties, which creates an additional cost to the purchasing price that people would already have to undertake without any financing options. So just trying to think of that snowball effect and trying to ameliorate that as much as possible is, I think, something we need to consider for next time. Even though we selected Machakos County as a location where there was enough rainfall and water resources, rivers and dams are the primary water sources, and in some parts are not easily accessible. So water resources were actually, in some cases, a barrier to adoption. Let's see. For follow-ups, collecting personal information was quite difficult, obviously in these local contexts, you know, sort of giving out your phone number so that a local representative from the company could call you back and give you the information that you requested is sort of the way to go. But because of an upcoming political campaign season, several participants, even though they were interested in purchasing a pump, were hesitant to share their contact details. So that also posed a barrier in sort of following up and converting to sales. Let's see. And there's also an expectation of handouts when participating in campaigns of this kind. And we on purpose did not have any handouts or any incentives provided to any stakeholder participation, whether they were the farmers sort of being educated or the trainers, et cetera, to avoid any kind of bias. But obviously that also means that for a community that's used to getting cash rewards when being invited to public forums or things like that, this was a disincentive to participate. And then again, on the side of suppliers, being able to participate in more demonstrations, really following up with interested community members and farmers, and providing appropriate product pricing information is really important. We had several cases where this did not happen, that connection was not made, and that contributes to the information gap. So just to conclude, the top 5 key recommendations that we have coming out of this campaign, again, is to ensure that there is some kind of product financing or purchase plan option for consumers so that, you know, upfront cost can be reduced a bit and people can be more incentivized or feel more confident in their ability to pay for a larger appliance like a solar water pump. develop and leverage more local distribution networks. So this distance to supply, or this disconnect between the local representative of a company and the local farmer who is trying to purchase a solar water pump, is reduced. Utilize mass media for increased reach, even though obviously door-to-door visits were really successful. You can only do so many of them. So in a larger campaign, maybe that's not just for one county, but within a country or many counties in a given area, using mass media like radio and TV shows obviously is a really great way to increase reach. And we would have loved, and we originally planned to have a longer campaign for better demand creation, recall, and impact. And this definitely holds true, even though we saw that almost 50% jump in understanding and knowledge. It's more likely that this kind of effort and information will fade in people's minds a lot faster because we were only there for 3 months. And that's why the Shamba Shape Up episodes will actually be really useful in kind of reminding people about this topic, and we'll be able to see hopefully an uptick in interest sort of mid-year. But being able to do this for longer obviously provides more sustainability, and that's the last concluding recommendation here, to be able to create a more sustainable campaign that can run beyond this sort of face-to-face direct engagement duration, that there can be conversion to sales facilitated, there can be financing facilitated, and there can be after-sales service facilitated as well. I'm going to end there. It's obviously a lot of information, and we are here to sort of delve deeper into some of these issues and to discuss any other key points that people might be interested in. So we are happy to take any questions now.
Yasmin, hi. Thank you for that presentation. As people think about the questions they want to send through, or even the comments from the presentation, I just wanted us to revisit the poll, and I'll share the results of the poll. So for the first question, can you guess which is the most popular method of irrigation? A lot of you actually got this correct, and that was diesel-powered irrigation. That came out as the most common form of irrigation. For solar-powered, it was the least common form of irrigation. And some of the reasons for that is affordability, access, and availability of the products. Then for the second question, can you guess what was ranked as a popular source of information on solar water pumps? Again, most of you got this correct, and the answer was word of mouth. And this is why within the campaign activities, we really leveraged the influencer farmers, because they're able to talk to other farmers and share their success stories, which is more relatable and an effective way of disseminating the information. Then for the third question, approximately how many people did we reach through the solar water pump awareness campaign? And this one, unfortunately, most of you got it wrong. The answer is 30,000. It's about maybe close to 32,000. So we just put a general figure on that. And finally, what percentage of farmers are keen to adopt solar water pumps within a year? And for this one, once again, people did not get it right. It's actually 80%, which was a very encouraging statistic. And we're hoping that this adoption will be followed through, and that the sellers and distributors will provide the support that's required. So yes, please send through your questions. If you'd want to ask them verbally, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. And in the meantime, Yasmin, I think we can also do just some Q&A between you and I. Oh, I see Killian has his hand up. So.
Yes, thank you very much, Jasmine. This was a very insightful presentation. I have plenty of questions, so maybe I can just start with some of them, and then we see if there are some more questions from the other participants. So I was wondering, have you also tracked the implications on sales that arise hopefully from your campaign? I mean, you did this, you did the baseline and then the final evaluation. Have you checked with potential suppliers of the technology if they felt any increase in specifically Machakos County?
Yes, we have. And the short answer is unfortunately no, but I'm going to ask Ruth actually to speak more to the engagement we had there.
Yeah, Thanks, Yasmin, and thanks, Gillian, for that question. Yeah, so as we have mentioned, yeah, we did engage the globally populated solar water pump suppliers for this campaign, and there are approximately 9 to very early on in the campaign, during the design and also during the campaign itself, anticipating that, yeah, it's not just enough to create awareness, you also want to link the awareness to the availability of these products. And so, so basically what happened is that during the implementation of the campaign activities, we basically coordinated with all these companies and put them in touch with the facilitators on ground, shared the schedules for like the community forums, for the house visits, and also basically followed through. So for whatever sales or sales leads that were coming out from the community, we also like communicated this information upwards to the companies. And so overall, I think in terms of engagement, like I say, while there was that opportunity, not so many companies were able to like fully take advantage of that, of this opportunity to participate. Also because I think, you know, also apart from the like the limited campaign timeline, and also like the number of community forums and the restrictions because of COVID around the number of people you are having, so you are not even able to like even have like market demonstrations, which will have been also very effective. So yeah, so but essentially we did see some participation for from some of these companies. They gave the product flyers, some of them sent their agents, and the feedback from the follow-up on the outcomes was that while a number of those that were engaged in the campaign, well, they got a number of like follow-up calls about inquiries about their products, but unfortunately none of those inquiries. So like, for example, in total, we had about like 100 inquiries from the farmers, but none of them were converted to sales, unfortunately. And the primary reason was, yeah, at least yeah, to this point. So maybe later on, yeah. And the primary barrier was like affordability, like the customer expectations of what this price of these products would be versus the actual price of these products. So yeah.
And to add to that, that's actually something, yeah, that's probably something we'll discuss further in the Q&A, but I just wanted to, you know, for the benefit of everybody who's participating, it's actually something we anticipated, this, you know, sort of financing barrier. And originally this campaign was planned for much earlier, right when the pandemic started. And it was supposed to coincide with the Global Leap results-based financing round for specifically for solar water pumps that included Kenya. So the idea was, again, to raise consumer awareness, but also provide a mechanism through which that awareness raising could translate into accessing and increasing a demand, but also being able to meet that demand and being able to provide new customers with a way to engage with solar water pumps and to purchase one a bit more affordably. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic and having, you know, so many lockdowns and a really long period of not being able to launch this campaign, that results-based financing mechanism had already run its course, but that was the original intent. And this really proves that, you know, that would have been really helpful. And it may be for a next future round, that is something that we would 100% ensure that happens. Either that's a results-based financing mechanism, some other subsidy, some other incentive, something that the participating suppliers themselves are offering, whether that's sort of some sort of pay-as-you-go system, et cetera, to ensure that maybe some of those financial barriers could be brought down. It looks like Peter had a question sort of about this as well in the chat. I just noticed whether he's asking whether financing was a challenge to those who are planning to switch to solar water pump technologies, and how the link is when it comes to accessing finance and adopting solar water pumps. I believe we've mainly answered that question, but the answer is yes. It looks like even those who say, I mean, even though there was a great percentage of participants who said they were interested and they were planning on converting to solar water pumps, until that conversion happens, we can't really bank on it. People will say a lot of things, but they won't follow through for various reasons. And financing, we saw, especially through some more key interviews that we held with a subgroup of the online survey participants, it was obvious that that was a main concern.
Yasmin, there's another question from Pacific Ishmael, and they're asking, was there pay-as-you-go solar water pumps option part of this campaign? If yes, was there any usage differences, interest, or leads that became sales between pumps, those that were financed on the pay-as-you-go model and those that were purchased on the cash basis?
Ruth, you want to answer that, or would you like me to?
Yeah, I can give it a go and then you can add on. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, so for the purposes of these campaigns, so basically the main role I think we were playing was like creating those linkages between the suppliers and the customers, the potential customers themselves. And then in terms of like the follow-up and making the actual purchases, so this would be something that the suppliers would actually be following up on. So from, like I mentioned, we had around 9 companies who are supplying solar water pump products that had globally awards affiliated. And so across these different companies, you know, we have some that do use pay-as-you-go, we have some that this is not an option. And so basically, so we had those different companies participating, offering all these different like financial access methods and models. And so that would depend with whoever the customer got in touch with, but I think, yeah, for on our end, basically the main touch point was just creating that linkage. And then in terms of like the follow-up, that was mainly the suppliers. And
Okay, why don't we take this opportunity to continue the Q&A in sort of a slightly different way. I would like to take a moment to introduce Killian, who has actually just asked us a great question already, but we're very excited to have Killian Blumenthal from GIZ. He's a junior advisor there, and he has been our main touch point through the Water and Energy for Food initiative, who is actually one of our Efficiency for Access Coalition members and who have kindly supported this campaign. So Killian, thank you so much for joining us today. And I wanted to have sort of like a moderated discussion with you a little bit, just to give you a chance to introduce yourself and the work that you do as well, and sort of your thoughts on how this campaign, I guess, fits more broadly within the ecosystem. Can you let us know what you consider some regional or maybe global trends that you may have observed in terms of productive use of energy adoption, and specifically for solar water pumps, and maybe some of the work that Water and Energy for Food has done on this to date?
All right, yes, thank you for having me here as well. These were a bunch of questions. Let me start with the first one, like the global and regional trends that, at least from my perspective, we see here in Kenya, but also if you talk to suppliers, also rather worldwide. So let's maybe start with the global one, that also the COVID-19 pandemic has obviously some effects as well on supply chains, and this increases significantly the cost for certain system components, which then in the end will lead to a higher system cost in general. And this morning I was in contact with someone from Sun Culture, and they mentioned that especially the shortage of microchips right now, it's kind of a global shortage, is quite a big hampering factors, because there are only a few suppliers worldwide that provide those chips. And basically the whole world economy is trying to get hands on those chips because they all need them. And so is also, for example, like solar pumping suppliers or any other productive use of energy suppliers that work with more advanced systems that include some microelectronics, some controllers, etc. So they are competing actually then with big companies, let's say like Tesla, who also need chips for their cars. And then obviously it's like, if you have a huge buyer of chips and then competing against like rather small SMEs that are working and trying to get hands on chips, it's a bit of an uneven fight. And And this is what right now in a global trend, many of the rather smaller suppliers, which are most of the solar pumping suppliers, are a bit challenging with. But if you check a bit more the regional scale, like in general, the number of productive use of energy supplies is quite stunning here in Kenya, at least. So there are more or less 100 companies already active in the solar productive use of energy space, and the numbers are still increasing. And the main trends here in Kenya, and this is from the NDEF productive use of solar energy report, is that mainly solar water pumps, solar cooling, and e-mobility are like the current trends here in Kenya. So from this angle, I mean, this campaign focused on solar powered irrigation system or solar water pumps makes actually a lot of sense. And I mean, here the focus was on Machakos County, which is like a bit of a reduced space compared to whole Kenya. And yeah, you can also see like differences within the region. Like Kenya is quite advanced already in terms of application of solar technologies. Like solar home systems are very much known to most of the rural Kenyans. So big parts have some sort of solar system in their homes to charge their phones or to have some light. And you could think that if they know already that you can power like your light with some solar panels, that you could also power, for example, a pump with panels. But it's not very obviously that this is actually the case. So also here, even if Kenya is in the application of solar technologies already quite advanced, still doesn't mean that people are very much aware of also the existence of solar water pumps. So I think there the campaign also makes a lot of sense. And I directly have like a question back to you. You can maybe answer it later on, because I was wondering all the time, like how you perceived the support or the engagement of the suppliers here in Kenya that supply water pumps. Like how would they support you during the campaign period? Because what you get from various reports that have been done here in Kenya, the recommendations is always we need more outreach and awareness and end user awareness. And also this is what suppliers would say, that in order to make more sales, they would educate, or they have to educate the farmers, because this is not something the government is right now doing already. So I was wondering like how you perceived like this engagement from the supplier side.
That's a great question. I'll actually ask Ruth to chime in here, because she's sort of our main liaison with the Global Leap companies. But I would say for my part, not having engaged with them directly myself previously, I felt that in the beginning of the campaign, so the campaign conception, the messaging planning, the visuals, sort of activities coming up in that time period, I believe all of the suppliers we reached out to, and we chose these suppliers. I think this will probably answer one of the questions that I saw in the Q&A as well. These suppliers we have engaged with through the Global Leap Awards in some shape or form. We have quality verified them. We know they have quality solutions that are suitable to these off-grid contexts, and that we find to be the most reliable, right? And that is a very important thing that we try to educate farmers on, because it's not necessarily something they think about, I don't think. It's something to instill in people of any kind of appliance use for a first-time user, that purchasing a quality solution will mean it'll last longer, it'll need less repair, and you will get more mileage, right, for the cost that you've paid. But putting that aside, all of them responded to, the engagement. They were very interested to receive the baseline survey results. We were very open with sort of how the campaign was progressing and what the planning was and what the thinking around that was. But I think when time came for them to participate in terms of product demonstrations, follow-ups, like we've mentioned, that's where it kind of fell short, at least for me. But the whole campaign one of the biggest reasons we did it was to also provide basically free advertising to suppliers, not necessarily to show favoritism. We were very careful, again, to talk about solar water pumps as a whole and not necessarily talk about companies or talk about one company versus another, because we wanted to be as impartial as possible and let the consumer choose what they felt was most appropriate for their needs directly themselves. But we did provide those linkages to appropriate companies that we felt would be able to meet that demand. So I will leave it there. I don't know, Ruth, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for that, Yasmin. But yeah, just as you have mentioned, like the interest was there actually during the actual engagement to like go in the field. And I think part of that still like ties into the earlier point you had made, Yasmin, like, it's financial implications come with like also sending staff to the field and also like determining how many events or activities you can participate in, and basically, so this were with the having, like, for example, like a financial mechanism that also is suppliers can also like get advantage of. Maybe some of these will have enabled them to be able to participate more. And then also maybe another area that sort of like limited some of the participation is that not all of these companies are targeting Machakos County, for instance, or even have like offices or staff or agents there. And so this also in a way, I think, also like impacted for some companies the extent to which they would be able to like fully take advantage for it. But but overall it was a good like an opportunity for them for the advertising and to link with the customer. It's just that the actual participation in the actual activities, that's where we saw these challenges.
All right, thanks for this question backfiring from me. Maybe I can just go on with some more points from this angle of like trends in the region. Like, obviously, I mean, it's not a trend, it's a fact that there's a strong population growth in all sub-Saharan African countries, which is then also related to there has to be higher food production. And the best way nowadays to increase food production is actually by irrigation. At the same time, there's also the effects of climate change and meaning or manifesting itself through droughts, through increasing temperatures or unreliable rainfall. So also here, like solar water pumps are helping in these 2 points. And also we had some colleagues traveling up to Eldoret, which is a bit more in the northwestern part of Kenya. And there here in the last couple of months, there's a severe drought going on, but rather in the northern counties. But my colleagues, they also went in contact with some suppliers there, and they actually noticed that the uptake of some solar irrigation pumps has increased in those countries, or in those counties where usually they rely on rain-fed agriculture. So specifically in the Eldoret region, where usually under normal circumstances, they would have sufficient rainfall over the year. But now with those droughts and the more and more unreliable rainfall, like there is a bit of a trend that solar-powered irrigation systems that are taking up a bit more. And what you can also see is that the market here in Kenya is already quite well developed for suppliers or with suppliers. So you can find some even local Kenyan suppliers that provide pumps, but also you find pumps of the other, let's say, bigger pump suppliers such as Grundfos, Lawrence, and you all find those here on the market in Kenya. And also bigger suppliers such as Lawrence, in the last year, they have a bit discovered like the smallholders as potential customers. And before they were quite hesitant to offer like smaller pumps because they did not see really the market for those. that at least I know that that Lawrence, they have developed like a pump which is in the range of I think around 100 watts, like really small. It's called micro pumps that target directly the market for smallholder farmers, while some companies here like Sun Culture or Future Pump or also Ennis, they all like focus specifically already rather smallholder farmers. So I think all those companies, they are going pretty much with the trend that farmers now already and also in the future, they have to rely more and more on solar irrigation. And this is also, well, a driver, even if in the long run for those technologies.
Thank you for that. I actually have more questions for you, but I want to turn it over to Lisa to introduce our other panelists so that we can all have a conversation together, hopefully.
Thanks, Yasmin. I think Kilian's last point was a good segue to our next speaker. And we'll be having Kavita Ndolo from Kithekani Farms just share with us a bit of his farming experience. He uses solar water irrigation on his farm. He has both crops and animals, so it would be nice for us to hear how that has worked out for him. And Ruth is going to be facilitating the conversation with him. So I invite her to chat with Kavita.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lisa. And yeah, thanks so much, Kavita, also for joining us and willing to share your experiences with using a solar water pump. So just because of just because of, can you just tell us more about like what you're farming and basically more about your farm and operation that you have going on in Machakos?
Oh, hi everyone. Kavita, the business lead at Kithekani Farms. So we're located in Machakos where this study happened, and we got to link up with the guys that are doing the study, especially towards the tail end of the project. So we grow fruits, vegetables, and pigs. We've done so many things over the last few years, but right now we concentrate in terms of fruits. We're doing mostly papaya. I mean, we have oranges and mangoes, but those don't depend on irrigation as much. But we have around 800 trees of purpose that are now fruiting and flowering. And then in vegetables now we're doing French beans. We've done other types of vegetables before, like we worked on a greenhouse with yellow and red pepper. We've done tomatoes, we've done kale, we've done spinach and the likes. And then in terms of animals, we mostly focus on pigs, but before that we're doing goats and chicken before.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that overview. So in terms of like, because you mentioned that you have several like vegetables and fruits that you're growing and producing in your farm. So where exactly where is the market for these products that you're producing for your farm?
We do local market. Like the location of the farm is gracious enough. We are in every direction, about 4 directions, we have a local market, like the ones that you'll have weekly open markets on Tuesdays and Thursdays and stuff like that. So we've established a link with the local distributors and retailers, so they pick at the farm gate. So everything is sold locally to existing markets just around us.
Right. Yeah, and so thanks for that. So basically all the produce that you're producing is mainly targeted for the local market within Machakos or the larger Kenya local market.
Machakos, except the French beans, because those are green beans, they're mostly for export, but all of them are still picked at the farm gate. So our model is always to cut cost on logistics and things like that. So we make sure like the sort of customers we get will always be picking at the farm. So at the moment, the only thing that is not consumed within Machakos County is the French beans that go direct for export. We have a contract for that.
Okay, great. And so how long have you been using a solar powered solution for your farming?
We've been using it just over 4 years because we got it in December 2017. So we mostly started using it in 2018, around February. Yeah. So 4 years.
Yeah, and so what exactly, so from all these like crops and vegetables that you've mentioned, so are all those irrigated, or are there like the specific ones that
Most of them are irrigated. Like, let me just explain a bit of how it works. Initially, when we started in 2018, we got two solar panels and two systems from a local provider, and we were pumping from the river. And at that time, we're doing greenhouse irrigation mostly. So we're irrigating our bananas and irrigating our tomatoes and all that for checkers. Then with time, that gave us an opportunity to try out different things, because now we realized we can pump so much water, especially during the dry season. And the last year, we increased our pumping by solar and got an extra pumping station that can pump 40,000 liters an hour, because 40,000 liters a day, because we've expanded the amount of land we have on irrigation. So initially we're doing 2 greenhouses and just a bit of orchard irrigation, but right now we're doing about 8 acres on irrigation.
right? And so before, maybe if you could take us back so that we can understand better like your journey towards solar powered irrigation. So previously, what were you using to irrigate your farm, and kind of that transition towards solar water pump, what like led you to that decision, towards that transition?
We had 2 options. We had a diesel pump at a local borehole, so we'd either have to fuel the pump at the local borehole so that pumps water to our farm. Our second option was using a petrol pump that we had at home. So we had a lot of fuel costs involved, a lot of breakages and things like that, because with moving them around, and every time you use it, it's almost like you'd incur a lot of costs per use, because you have to oil it, you have to repair it, you have to fuel it, and then with increasing cost of fuel, it was not reliable. And then other times, because of the number of times it would break down, and sometimes just having operation problems, because you need to be there for it to work, or you need an expert there for it to work. So you'll always be incurring a lot of costs. So we needed something, because the time when we got the solar pumps, I was still working as a project manager in Nairobi, so I was not at the farm permanently. So we needed something that could work without a lot of supervision, a lot of people involved, especially given that most of the workers in front of the farm are not technically aware on how to deal with some of these things. So you'll end up with a lot of damages. So transition was based on costs and also reliability over a long time, and as well as just ease of operation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I see Kenyan has a follow-up question to that.
Yes, thanks a lot. We saw earlier on one of the slides that from one of the surveys that you did with the farmers, they mentioned that they would prefer, or they would have petrol or diesel pumps as the first choice. And this was backed up with their durability and their easy maintenance. Maybe you could just give us your opinion on that. Kavita,
my opinion on that is like, one of the things I've found, especially when I try to refer other farmers to solar water pumps, they assume that they're hard to repair because they're used to breakages with their pumps and stuff like that. So one of the things that happens is like, what happens when this breaks down? Like, they think we'll have to send it back to Nairobi. We don't have a local technician who deals with solar. So there's that lack of technical expertise at rural level, where in case there's a problem, you'll have to get an expert from further away. So when they talk about ease of repair and ease of use, it's because they always know a guy they can call to come fix their petrol pump. They don't know someone who they can call to even come install their solar power. So it's more a lack of, it's a knowledge gap, because in most instances, the people that have been able to convince to pick up that solar power pumping was because they visited my farm and saw that it does not involve a lot of repairs and does not involve a lot of technical expertise. Like once it's set up, in many cases, it will just operate without a lot of changes. So there's always that fear. What if it breaks down? Do I have someone around me who can fix that for me? So that's one of the biggest issues.
All right, thank you. That's interesting insight.
Yeah, thanks, Kenyan. Yeah, and so Kavita, as you're saying, so how did you come about, like how did you come about knowing about solar water pumps, and what sort of like and basically, yeah, like what was the sort of like the selling point for you to sort of like transition and adopt use of solar water pumps?
There are two things for me. One is that it's going to work throughout the year, especially during the dry season. At that time, most of what we're doing was rain-fed agriculture, and the other time we're using pumping. So it was, if I have something that I can use throughout the year, because Machakos is quite sunny. And then another selling point was the company I was using at that time had a lifetime warranty in case of any breakdown. So all I needed was either to bring the pump to Nairobi or send it to the nearest Wells Fargo. So they'd come and pick it up, and within a few working days we'll have it back. Or sometimes we send technicians over a couple of times, because the few times we had to move it or had to improve it or had to change a few things is usual with any machine. But at least that follow-up was very important for us. And then the other thing that really helped at that time, because again, investing in solar is a bit more expensive than getting petrol pumps. So there's always that access to finance for that. So the company I was using gave us a higher purchase sort of option where you'd pay 10,000 shillings, which is what, $100, and then you pay about $40 a month for the next 2 years, which is easy because our production was way beyond that. So it was easy to get in knowing that I will not buy this all at once. Like it's not a one-time purchase. And then because there is ongoing maintenance and ongoing feedback and ongoing customer support, then we can work on a solution. So I didn't feel like I dipped both my feet going into that. But now, after getting used to that, that's when I was able to invest higher amounts for a bigger solar pump. Yeah. So it was mostly being able to access an option where I don't have to pay everything at once, and also knowing that in case there are any issues, since it's something that I'm new to, I have access to information and access to support throughout.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for those inputs. Yeah. So I guess yeah, that assurance that comes that in case of any breakages or in case of any issues that arise, you're having help at hand, and also the financing also made sense for you, and so sort of like yeah, motivated you towards this direction. And so looking back, like, because now it's 4 years of using solar water pumps, has there been, from this experience of using these solar water pumps, has there been something that, looking back, you wish you had known ahead of time before buying or taking up the solar water pumps? And basically, yeah, 4 years later on as well, what do you think has been, how would you, I guess, rate your satisfaction with the use of solar water pumps, and when making and how useful do you think it would be in terms of like looking at the community that you're in, and also like the farmer groups and all those other stakeholders that are engaged in farming? So what do you think is the benefit that they would get from use of the solar water pumps?
One of the highest benefits, especially in my area, is that Machakos is known for the sun. Like it's always dry and hot. So, but if you get solar water pumps, you convert the sun from being a problem to a resource, and that has been big for us. And it has influenced farmers around me. At least 3 other farmers I know have started using solar pumps after I started doing that. And the conversion, I would say, was because of seeing it working. Like every time you have a demo or you have someone who can actually access and see that this has worked before, and it's not from, it's not textbook, and it's not from a vendor. It's from someone I know who is actually farming in an area that is similar to mine and having the same solution. Then that becomes easier. Like the people that have been able to convince to get into solar water pumping are people that have actually seen what it has done in my area, and that has been a few people. One of the things I wish I knew was the availability of different pumps and things like that. Because I remember a while back, I was looking through that and I thought the market was very limited on that. And it's just after I got a bigger pump that I realized, I mean, there was a more reliable pump I could have gotten. Like it was not a big deal because it still serves me, but it's just realizing that there are several options and it's not so difficult, because many times you'll have to depend on the agent of the company that is supplying that, and they're always looking to make a sale. So sometimes they'll not give you as many options as you have. So I think researching a little bit more has helped me to realize that for the different components of a solar pump system, it's easy to get from different companies, because you'll find that some companies are more reliable on the panels. So the panels will pump all weather, which means that when it's cloudy, it's still pumping. Some of them, a small cloud and you're not pumping anymore, but everything else is reliable. So learning that I can mix and match different parts of the system has been one of the biggest lessons. And also learning that there's access to finance nowadays for that. I think now there are banks and institutions offering a way for you to pay off that based on debt, as opposed to just making a one-time purchase. But the biggest lesson that you had with that is that it makes it easy to fund through there. It makes it possible to use the sun as a resource instead of a problem, because for most of my life and most of my experience there is that you look at the sun and think like, it's too sunny here, I cannot farm. But when you decide to convert that into a resource, then it's beneficial to you as a farmer.
That's a great insight. We should have had you write our campaign messaging. I quickly wanted to interject and ask, I thought what you said about, not knowing what your choices really were, like how much choice you actually had versus what you were presented, and when you had to decide which pump to get. That was really interesting. I wondered if you had to do it all over again, what kind of resource would be most useful to you, or where do you go to find information like that? So that could be considered in a future effort where we not only talk about what is a solar water pump and how important that is, but also to be able to provide people with all of the choices that they have and all of the information they need.
One of the things that is easy for me was because I worked in the building industry before construction. So I had access to a few mechanical engineers and technicians like that. So I knew a little bit about like solar, but more on solar water heating for apartments, because that was what I was doing in the city. So I had a little bit technical expertise and access to engineers. So what really helped me, I would get, because there's a time when I was doing like the last solar water pump station I was doing, I had to do a bid and get different bids, and all of these guys are sending me technical information. So one of the things that helped me was that I had access to an engineer who could translate that for me. All I could see was just different company names and different capacities. It's like, because I'd ask them, give me something that will give me at least 40,000 liters of water a day when I pump in. And they gave me different solutions, but I came to find out later, like some of them had provided, because sometimes people will give you whatever is in stock, not whatever is good for you. They are trying to maybe get their stock off and things like that. So just having, I think it's important to have information that an end user that is not technical would understand. And I think it's possible because they've done that with the petrol pumps, like the petrol diesel pumps. Anyone can walk in and they will get information on how far will this pump for, how many liters of diesel or petrol do I need to pump for maybe 2 acres or 3 acres, and how long does it go before it needs oil change and things like that. There are those basic questions that in every local shop for diesel powered or petrol powered pumps, you will get direct answers for. But when it comes to solar, that information varies from company to company. Like they will not give you specific pumps and specific solar panels. And mostly it's because of maybe competition, maybe because there's not a specific formula for it. Like everyone, as Killian shared, like there's so many new companies for that. So there are enough providers and there are many coming up, but there's not enough, I don't know how to put it, like a baseline where
standardization.
Yeah. Like
yeah, it's all very true. And Ruth can actually talk more about the technical aspect of things. I'm not as well versed, but you know, the immediate thing I thought of when you said that is, you know, kind of the amount of petrol a diesel pump needs is a measurable unit, right? But you don't know, it's hard to say you will always get X amount of solar irradiation and you will get this yield out of this pump. If it's cloudy, like you said, some are more sensitive than others. And so then that day you get much less water. On a very sunny day, you get much more water. So it's a bit harder to streamline that information. But I do hear you on having sort of more clear and standardized performance metrics about how much does this cost, but also how much sun does this need, what kind of attention does that solar panel need, and when, what kind of technical requirements it has. I don't know, Ruth, did you have anything else to add to that? And I will say the Shamba Shape Up episode coming up in June, I think our fellow expert from our team talked quite a lot about this at an actual farm where an installation was taking place, and he talked about, you know, the different parameters that one should consider in terms of selecting what kind of pump is right for you. So hopefully that also helps answer some of those questions for others down the line.
Yeah, I think you've adequately captured that, Yasmin. I don't think I'll add on to that. But yeah, but I do acknowledge that the challenge, like, like sometimes with solar water pumps is that, you know, like there are other factors that come into play, right? Like it's not really like one standard solution, like this is the standard petrol pump of this size that will always, so there are different, so it's like there are factors that influence its performance as well, which also have to come into play. And so it's maybe the feedback there is like in our messaging, we need to find a way to like make that more clearer, I guess, for our target audiences. Yeah, great. And so maybe a follow-up to this. So being like in part of the community, where do you think, or where will be, at what point in the community, where do farmers, I guess, in the community, information about products such, I guess, their appliances that they are using? So where do these farmers get this information? And do you think basically in terms of like the campaign, because you did get to participate, and sort of like the mechanisms and sort of where you are targeting those channels that you are using, do you think they are, in your opinion, do you think they were effective and were targeting the information points where these farmers would likely be linked to get this information? And overall, basically also in terms of your campaign, do you think it was relevant or beneficial to have similar campaigns in future as well?
Two ways I know work is, especially in rural areas, is the radio. So I'm glad you guys did a radio run, because a lot of them listen to things on the radio. When I started farming, that was something that was very new to me, because I was used to finding things on the internet or calling experts. But when I got there, everyone knew different things from the radio. They'll be like, this type of seeds, this type of fertilizers. So a lot of them find out things from the radio. So that was, especially vernacular radio, that's an important channel for advertising, because radio reaches a lot in rural areas. So I think the reach that you guys estimated is actually true, because a lot of people listen through that. But what converts sales, besides knowing a person that walks around and that farm to farm visit, it's showing them a working solution. I think what has successfully converted most people, because I've done different improvements since I started farming, which one new there. Like the first day when I'm installing my solar pump, which is like 8 panels and a huge pump and yeah, that kind of thing. My neighbor saw that, asked about the cost, followed up with a different company than the one that I was using, and installed the same. After we did that, a few other people in the community asked about the same thing. So I think word of mouth and radio are the most effective things in rural areas. And especially if word of mouth is coming from someone who's actually used it before. So that influencer engagement is very important. When it comes to your campaign, I mostly interacted in the tail end as someone who's used it before. So, I mean, when they came in, I knew most things about solar. I'd already done that. I wish I had experienced that before because it would have helped me ask crucial questions, because having someone coming to do a study, they have more linkages to the market than you. They have more information that you probably have. So that would have helped me make better decisions earlier. But by the time they came, I'd already installed most solar systems that I needed. But I found it quite useful. Like the questions they had and what they're doing, I was like, yeah, that sort of engagement is needed. It may not have immediate results like within a month or two, but give it a year or 2 years down the line. So the next time they're hearing an ad on radio, they've seen someone talk to them and they've heard of a farm where this and that works. So it helps. It builds up to the access to knowledge, which is very important for adoption.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, for that feedback. And I do agree with you that I know, yeah, seeing is believing is a very big marketing component for produce, at least in the Kenyan market. So that's well noted. Yeah, so I'll invite any other guest or panelist with questions for Kavita.
Yeah, I wanted to actually, oh, go ahead, Kavita.
Size. I think the offering solutions for smallholder farmers is better. I produce quite a lot, but a lot of people will be farming on an acre or two. So the smaller the package, the easier it is for them to adopt. I'm talking about this because I've seen solar power adopted in almost every homestead. It was not there 7 years ago, 5 years ago. But the moment they started making like really small panels that will light 2 bulbs, charge a phone, and power the radio, almost every home, because easy installation and serves my needs. Because at that point, they don't watch TV. It's people just wanting to light up their homes and charge their phones. So that adoption of smaller systems helps smallholder farmers, especially in rural areas, take up such systems, because not all of them will want to pump 40,000 liters like me. Some of them just on like maybe 1,000 or 2,000 liters for kitchen garden or for a small shop.
That's very helpful. I actually wanted to bring Kenyan back into the conversation a little bit, ask him a couple more of the questions that I had in mind, and this might help us sort of end on a slightly broader note. So with Kavita, we kind of really honed in on like one experience in one area, and that's so nice to hear. And it's not something that we often get exposed to. So thank you so much for sharing all of your feedback. But sort of to pull this back up a little bit again, Kenyan, I figured you'd be the best person to kind of talk us through. And we did say this was sort of a first of its kind campaign, but obviously there are other similar consumer facing activities out there. Can you tell us if Water and Energy for Food engages in similar consumer facing activities, or if you're aware of others doing similar things? And if so, if you could share some highlights of those, just so people have other resources to go to beyond what we've been able to share today.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think in general, like Water Energy for Food and our precursor program, which was called Powering Agriculture, we have worked quite a lot with the topic of solar powered irrigation systems. And so there is a whole that is hosted on energypedia.org. Maybe I can later post this in the chat. So this is like a publicly accessible website where you can download for free many different planning tools, because as we heard earlier in this conversation, if it comes to solar irrigation pumps or solar water pumps, like the planning is way more crucial than if you would buy like a diesel pump, because with the diesel pump, you have your output depending on your input of fuel and the rating of the pump. So these are like your characteristics. And with the solar pump, you need way more planning. And like there is this toolbox available that would help them specifically, rather already technicians who have like a basic understanding of things, obviously. So it would not be something a normal farmer would be able to manage. But if we are talking about all these new POE companies coming up, have big and a good advantage to using this tool to be able to first calculate the water requirement that the farmer actually has, to then come up with the right sized pump, also depending on some parameters of the total pumping system, like how much water I need per day or per hour, and how high do I want to pump this water? Do I need a tank? How high is the tank? Sufficient pressure for my irrigation system? So it's like a whole bunch of things you have to consider if you're irrigating with solar energy. And yeah, just to highlight this, there's this component available, and there are also a number of trainings that are done specifically for this toolbox, so that people, and specifically like service providers or suppliers, they can get trained on the usage of those toolbox to use it to further work together and advise farmers on the correct choice. So this is one big point. We are right now also we have Water Energy for Food. We have signed an MOU with the Lake Basin. They are situated in this whole Lake Victoria Basin and covering several counties. And with them and an organization or a company called WISE that are also situated here in Kenya, we are soon providing to staff of the LBDA a number of trainers on exactly this toolbox to bring them like this, the knowledge or the availability to use the tools that are available, and then having them doing further outreach in the Lake Basin region. Like this is like one of the outreaches that we do. Then obviously with Shamba Shape Up, we have done this already last year. So we had been present in the last year's shooting or season, and also with you. We're having these 2 more episodes that will appear like in June. Like we realized that there with these outreach campaigns, we were very happy with the outcome of those goods. And I was also there present during the shootings, and our technical expert Mike Benny was always there and doing everything in English and in Swahili. So I think these are media you can use quite well to reach like a high number of farmers. And this, I think there's always something you have to like consider what you want to do. Like with some of the media, like the Shamba Shape Up outreach, where you reach like really millions of farmers, same as maybe your radio advertisements you mentioned earlier. You have like high outreach for relatively low work input that you have to do. Also then you have to check on the efficiency then of those campaigns. And as mentioned by also yourself, but also by Carita, that this mouth-to-mouth propaganda is actually way stronger, and to advise or to convince others to buy such a system. And this is not only the case for solar water pumping system, but I think it's a valid argument for every consumer decision that there is. Like if you hear from a friend that he or she likes this very product, you're much more likely to buy it if they recommend it to you than if you just see it or hear it in advertisement. But obviously then these mouth-to-mouth campaigns are like these household visits, they are more tedious to implement, even if probably then they are more efficient. So I think you just have to level out like how much time and resources you have to put in there. And yeah, I think to just in general, we have this toolbox that is available, and also we have these trainings in East Africa, person trainings that are coming up in the next couple of months, but also online trainings that can be done anytime. So there is a certain e-learning modules developed, and then also these in-person and online training with tutors at hand that we are currently doing. And then the shape of episodes. And then another big point, obviously, one of the challenges is always like the access to finance component. And here, what we are also right now working on, and this is something we would probably finish by the end of next month, is we work with the Kenya Bankers Association to having they have their own like knowledge platform where they have certain videos that are all related to green technologies, green financing. It's called the Sustainable Finance Initiative, which the Kenya Bankers Association, and this is like the umbrella organization of mostly all the banks here in Kenya. And bankers can then enroll to the Sustainable Finance Initiative and do e-learning modules in different types of topics. And there we are working on a number of e-learning modules focusing productive use of energy technologies, such as solar processing, solar cooling, but also solar irrigation systems. And this is like one of the ways where we are also trying to get a bit into this field. Like our thinking here is obviously if we make also the bankers of technologies such as solar water pumps, that in the end, there could be loan products coming up from there that would facilitate the end users to actually procure such a pump, or that would help companies that need a loan for their development to have better opportunities to get such a loan. So I think to just to name these three that we are just currently working on, but obviously the topic of solar water pump has a long history with our program and the precursor program as mentioned. And yeah, I'm very optimistic that it will continue, and one day or the other, I see there is no alternative to solar water pumps.
Great, thank you, Kenyan. Very exciting to hear about those projects, specifically the one to do with bankers, because as has been discussed earlier on this call, availability for financing options is a key obstacle. So it's good to hear that things are in the works and it'll enable us to scale, access to solar water pumps for farmers. I would just like to say it's been a great 1.5 hours, and we are now coming to the end of this call. So Kavita and Kenyan, thank you so much. We appreciate you making the time to join this and sharing your perspectives with us. For the Efficiency for Access team, it was great to hear about the solar water pump campaign and just share the learnings that we